If you're like me, one of your goals for 2025 is to deepen your understanding of how AI can be harnessed for marketing and then to implement that and bake it into your standard operating procedures. A big aspect of this, of course, is content development. Where should we use AI? But how can we do it in a way that's authentic to our brand and authentic to our spokesperson or that subject matter expert who is quote unquote authoring that piece? That's where we're going to focus today. We're going to talk about defining tone of voice and then how to take that in addition to other aspects of your brand and train AI through large prompts or through custom GPTs so that you get a better output when you're brainstorming and trying to develop draft content with AI. Let's do this.
Welcome to Content Marketing Engineered, your source for building trust and generating demand with technical content. Here is your host, Wendy Covey.
Hi, and welcome to Content Marketing Engineered. On each episode, I'll break down an industry trend, challenge, or best practice in reaching technical audiences. You'll meet colleagues, friends, and clients of mine who will stop by to share their stories. And I hope that you leave each episode feeling inspired and ready to take action. Before we jump in, I'd like to give a brief shout out to my agency, True Marketing. True is a full-service agency located in beautiful Austin, Texas, serving highly technical companies. For more information, visit truemarketing.com. And now, on with our podcast. Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Content Marketing Engineered. I'm joined today by Melissa Reeve. Welcome to the show, Melissa.
It's such a pleasure to be here.
The past couple weeks, you've had pneumonia, and you would never know it to hear your voice. How are you? What was that like? It sounds pretty awful.
Yeah, so the real culprit here was a broken thermometer. So just as a PSA for your audience, if you have one of those digital forehead thermometers, it turns out that when the batteries start growing, they just give erroneous readings. So what was happening is I was getting a 98.6 reading, even though I had 102-degree fever. So,
oh my goodness.
Yeah, it took a little minute for that to work itself out, but then got on some antibiotics and I'm feeling much better. Thank you.
Good, good. Well, I'm glad to have you here today. And we're going to talk about how to use AI for writing and specifically for tone of voice. And this is right up our alley here at Content Marketing Engineered. I mean, that's what we do, right? We write. And I'm glad we're going to get way in the weeds on this. I think a lot of people come on and they want to talk about AI for content, why it's bad or why it's good. But I like this topic and what we have in store. But before we jump into that, I wanted to just provide our listeners with a little bit of background because you have a very interesting career journey. So I'd love to hear, how you've meandered through the realm of marketing and agile, and then what led you to start Marketing Frontier along with your partner, Jim Buell.
Yeah, thanks for that. So my background it's funny, I'm one of those people, I have a degree in Japanese literature and language. But I fell into marketing, have loved it, really been at the intersection of technology. So was part of that first wave of digital marketing and education and marketing. So I've done a lot of higher education marketing. I discovered something called agile marketing, which is taking agile software development practices, applying them to marketing in the early days of 2011. And that segued into a career where I was the VP of a company called Scaled Agile. And they took those agile principles and they scaled them up into the world's largest organizations. Super fascinating. I could geek out on it for a long time if we had a whole nother show on that. But just to think about, like, even Nike has 10,000 software developers, and they need to churn out software and they need a process for doing that. So I adapted that for marketing, established the Agile Marketing Alliance, so a group of people advocating for that. It was when ChatGPT came on the scene, so November 2022, and I saw the writing on the wall and I thought, this is really going to impact marketers. And I actually thought it was this perfect marriage of some of the agility practices that I'd learned and how do you bring those into an AI native marketing organization. So I've been geeking out on all things AI and marketing, AI and content, AI and agile. and have brought that together into the MarketingFrontier.AI company and website.
I was just going to ask. So, do you feel that agile, like or agile? However, I've heard people say it both ways. I told you, I
Yeah,
say everything with a
tomato,
Texas
tomato.
accent. Do you feel that that methodology or philosophy, business philosophy, is helpful as people go to adopt AI within their organizations? Is it a great way to apply that, or do you find that it's parts of it are not as applicable today?
Well, I think you've got to separate the mindset from the practices. So, not every agile practice is necessarily going to map to marketing, and that's the way it's always been.
Yeah.
But that mindset, the test and learn mindset, oh my gosh, AI is going to take A B testing and move it to A to infinity testing. And things like taking an iterative approach, that's going to be imperative when you talk about AI. So there's so much around Agile that I feel like is really, really critical to a new way of working. And AI is going to be our default way of working. It kind of already is in some ways.
Yeah.
And I feel like marrying those two together is going to supercharge some marketing organizations.
Oh my gosh, I love that. From A/B testing to A to infinity testing. That's good. I never really, yeah, I hadn't considered that A/B testing is going to sound like a very, very dated principle, or really already is.
Right?
Yeah. Okay, good. Well, all right. Well, let's turn our focus to writing content. So,
Mhm.
obviously, there's a lot of marketers listening, especially those like marketers of solo marketers, marketers of one or few that are overwhelmed and they are thinking, oh, is AI my answer? Can I turn over
Mhm.
writing or a good portion of writing? And then those larger organizations who are getting pressure from executives that say, I'm not giving you more headcount. You need to learn how to do more with AI. So they give it a try. And Melissa, you've heard the story, right? They're like, wait, what is this output? I can't use
Mhm.
this. This is not a good use of my time. This is not
Mhm.
going to work. So why is this a common struggle?
Yeah, so you have to think about AI. I think of it as my magic genie. You know, the AI is every piece of knowledge that has ever been published on the internet. And like anything else, it's not only a bell curve where you have really amazing content and really crappy content, but you have that bell curve across every single type of writing you can ever conceive of. And I love to use John Wayne as an example because one of the tone of voices that I've trained is John Wayne. And can you
Oh,
take this email and make it sound like John Wayne? Well, of course it can because it knows everything about everything in the world. And so if you don't narrow that down for AI, it just like goes to the lowest common denominator that's
yeah.
out there. And it'll produce some really bland sounding stuff. But if you start to train it, if you start to narrow that scope for it, and like I said, you could even say, sound like John Wayne in a bathtub. Sound like John Wayne when he's like super sloshed. You start to give it that level of specificity. You start to like give AI license to be creative in a way that's aligned to your writing style, your brand voice, and your tone of voice.
Hey, yeah. So do people do that by just having the AI look over a couple pieces of content, or do they come up with their celebrity doppelganger, or how do they get started with that?
Well, I had a frustrating experience the other day because it was a couple of months ago, actually. And I was at a conference, and this woman gave an entire presentation on how she couldn't train AI on her tone of voice. And I was frustrated because I just wanted 10 minutes with her to say, well, let's try a few things. So, the first thing I'd invite you to do is really define your brand voice so that AI knows what that's like. And when you give it that level of specificity. So, for example, I like to say things like I write in a warm conversational tone of voice with a touch of humor. Or you could say something like use short, punchy sentences similar to Anne Handley, who's a very famous content marketer, similar to her style. And so, yes, you could just upload examples, but you have to be careful there because when you really think about your brand voice, you probably have a wide range even within your brand.
Yeah, you too have the greatest writing within your brand and some terrible stuff hiding away in the corners, right? There's a bell curve to that as well.
And when you talk to people through social media, you might be using a slightly different voice than if you're writing an email versus if you are writing a letter for your finance team or writing even your career page. So you really have to articulate those differences for AI in order for them to deliver what you want them to deliver.
So, do you see this as a bit of a hierarchy? Like you define this tone of voice for your corporate brand, right? Like we're
Mhm.
authoritative or all the things you said, friendly but approachable.
Yeah,
And then the next layer is for these platforms, we want the nuance to be X, Y, and Z. And that way, when you're going to write your piece, you're working your way down. That makes
that's
sense.
right. And the the thing there is that each of those platforms also has parameters, right? So you think about Twitter and the number of characters there.
Right.
Sorry, I still call it Twitter. Um,
We all
you
know
know,
what you're talking about.
yeah. It's like Prince, like formerly
Exactly.
known as Prince, formerly known as Twitter. So so you have to put those parameters in your prompts. And so Facebook, you might have something that's a little bit longer. LinkedIn, obviously, you probably want to sound a little bit more professional. Instagram, you're going to craft that message a little bit differently. And so even within social media, you are going to have very refined prompts. And I have seen prompts, and I've used prompts that are roughly a page long. And those prompts tend to have this is the Twitter, this is for Twitter. You have this character limits. What does your emoji usage look like? What does your tone of voice look like? Here's some examples of what good looks like
Yeah.
for us using Twitter. And you've got to give it that level of detail in order to get the results you're looking for back out.
Okay, so I'm envisioning this page long prompt,
Mhm.
obviously one that can be reused and just tweaked a little bit. So, where do you go? How do you get from long prompts to the need for a custom GPT?
Yeah.
When is it right to make that leap?
Well, I think it's when you start to reuse.
Hmm.
So if you're using that same prompt over and over, you're nodding. So I'm going to ask you a question in a minute. Then set up a custom GPT. And it's super easy. I know that starts to sound a little bit intimidating for certain people. For certain people are like, I got this. But
Yeah.
for others, you just have to go into ChatGPT, click on something called Explore GPTs, click Create in that upper right hand corner. Um, just a couple of caveats. I know everyone is super concerned about data sharing and data privacy. So be sure to select that only me option when creating that custom GPT. Otherwise, what it does is it goes out into basically becomes a public GPT. And you don't want that for your brand.
No.
Now, if you're just exploring, you can click on that Explore GPT and you will see all the GPTs that people have made public. I don't love them. I'm sure there's some great ones in there, but I've tried a few and mixed results. Um, anyway, you want to click on that only me option and restrict access only to yourself. Define the specific roles and grant only those necessary permissions to act with people to access and interact with that custom GPT within your organization.
Yeah.
And then that's another reason why some organizations use tools like Jasper.ai or Write.ai to help make sure that things are constrained, that the brand guidelines aren't being shared. So I just encourage you to either try tools that are authorized within your organization or dink around on your own around building a custom GPT. So my question for you is, are you using custom GPTs and what are your use cases?
Yes, we are using them, and the use case is very similar to what you described. So, as an agency, we often are tasked with brand positioning and messaging for companies.
Mm,
So, think your corporate, who are we, your positioning statement.
mhm,
And along with that, we're defining a corporate tone and voice. And so now, as a deliverable of that project, we're now creating the custom GPT where we're loading this all in and creating some of the things that you described. So that way they have a head start. So before the deliverable was say in a PDF, and maybe
mhm.
we'd have the brand colors and all sorts of stuff. They're the guiding principle, depending on all the work we were doing. Maybe there's a PowerPoint that sales uses. So now this is another deliverable so that then the company can take that and start to create that downstream content that's very aligned.
Yeah, it just takes
Um,
that translation work out of it, like having to take your deliverable of the messaging,
yeah.
and ChatGPT can help you translate it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other fun one is we're working with companies on thought leadership at different levels within the organization
Mm,
and helping them to understand, okay, if the company is doing a campaign on X, what is the message that the executive sponsor says? What is the
mhm.
message that the technical leader says? What does the FAE say? How can you take that same message and translate it throughout the organization? So I think that's another fun one that might have some play along with the GPT, although we're not getting into that level.
Yeah, and you mentioned earlier talking about uploading examples, and especially when you're talking about your executives and executive voices, the video, like a video presentation, like them talking or an interview, is a great file to upload. So typically with these custom GPTs, especially in the paid version, and I forget if it's you have to have the paid version to do this, but you can upload files and examples.
Mhm.
And the more specific you can get, uploading social media examples with social media, but then with the executives, uploading video or audio of how they actually talk, that will help AI to parse that and create content in their voice more clearly.
Okay, so it's all about getting that assist, making it very authentic to who you are as a brand. So you can't
Mhm.
that's the whole point, right? That's why the crap in, crap out that we talked about at the very beginning,
That's
because you're
right.
not doing the heavy lifting up front to make it authentic to who you are. So, oh,
That's exactly it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, what about teams that want to go even deeper with AI? What are you seeing them do?
Well, so we've talked about how you could just craft a prompt. So that's kind of level one. We've talked about creating your custom GPT, level two. And so for bigger teams or tech savvy marketers, then I would go with an AI assistant and or just even very, very fine-tuned models. So the difference between an AI assistant and a custom GPT is actually not that much. But what an AI assistant allows you to do is it starts to create an API interface for multiple people to start to access that same assistant. And so, for example, if you were to build an automation, the two most common automation tools that I've been hearing about are Zapier and Make.com. I just did some research this morning on three other ones, but I haven't played with them, so I don't want to share them. So, what those will do, let's say that you start with a a blog post, and then you want to translate that blog post into a newsletter snippet. And you've got a certain tone of voice that you use in your email. It's fun, it's playful, etc. You could create an AI assistant. Again, this is on the developer side of ChatGPT. Do the same thing you did with your custom GPT. Upload your tone of voice documents, upload your files. But the difference is that somebody could then run that automation. They could say, take this blog post, turn it into a newsletter snippet, which has these parameters, this word count, this tone of voice. And then you might even be able to use that automation to push it into your email system.
Okay.
So
And then you're creating a repeatable process,
there you
I would
go.
assume, once you get this down with some human oversight, right?
Mhm.
Let's review, let's make sure it's pulling the right things, that sort of thing.
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
So, a lot of times, your more technically advanced marketers will be able to figure this out. I was able to figure it out with a little bit of tweaking. But if you've got developer resources on hand, if you've got somebody you can pair with, or you just have the desire to learn, I do feel like this is entirely learnable for a marketer.
Yeah, and I would add another similar use case to this, which was take the data from your CRM, right? Take that
Mhm.
personalization data and put that together with that source material. So how can I personalize at scale? And a lot of people are cracking the code at this using Zapier and those different tools. I think where I get a little hesitant on those is within our market. We're marketing to highly technical buyers,
Mm,
and you have to be so careful, right, to get
mhm.
your facts completely straight, or you lose trust very quickly. So just the material that you're using to do this, you need to make sure that you somehow keep the technical accuracy of what you're saying intact. So
It's
we're
true. Those engineers are picky. You
yeah,
say one wrong thing and they're all over you.
absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. Now, I will say I have used automations, and I know we're drifting a little bit from the tone of voice, but to your point about the approvals process and the review process, sometimes I will send those automations into something like an Airtable.
Mhm.
And then I'll have some approvals built into that where they can, just hit approve on some content. And then that will trigger a second automation that will flow it into like a website.
Okay.
And so that's a nice way to have some of those guardrails built in to
Yeah.
these automations.
Yeah, cool. Well, let's see. So we've talked about doing the heavy work up front to define your brand, your tone of voice, put this in GPT. We've talked about either custom GPT or just long prompts, and then going even deeper. What other advice do you have?
Yeah, I feel like just being persistent and also being very nuanced.
Mm,
One of the things you've just got to keep playing and keep learning from podcasts like this.
yeah.
One of the things that really changed my prompt was when I added the words be very specific and nuanced in your reply. And I also add this one, which is your truth GPT, which means you can't make things up. So that keeps it from going a little bit too crazy. But then you might want it to go and be a little bit more creative. So there you can set what's called the temperature. And you can do this. This is now on that more advanced backend, the AI assistant. You can set the temperature of AI. And this is what allows it to be creative or not creative. And I've gotten some of the best responses from ChatGPT when I've set either the temperature very high, indicating that you want it to be very, very creative, or if you're not on the back end, you can just say, be as creative as possible in your reply. And all of a sudden, there's some innovation that gets us away from that language that everybody hates, the deep dive, in a world where, that these
Let's
giveaways
delve in.
let's delve in. Which actually goes to another point, which is you can create a negative word list. If there's words that just trigger you to say this is AI generating it, in
Yeah,
your prompt, in your custom GPT instructions, be sure and include that negative word list. I'm
beautiful.
curious, do you have something like that going on?
No, no, but I will now. I certainly
Right.
know it when I see it.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
Because, again, you want to give it some guidance. It's like, here's what you want to do,
yeah.
but also here's what you don't want to do.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I know one of the things that marketers are struggling with right now is, one, this feeling of being behind, and
Mhm,
everyone's feel that way, right? And also just not knowing where to go for help. So,
mhm,
give me an idea of just what Marketing Frontier is all about, what
mhm.
services you guys provide, and how people can learn more.
Yeah, I really appreciate the opportunity to share that. We
Yeah.
have a ton of free resources out on the website. We have got Marketing AI Radio, which is a podcast where we talk about all things AI. We've got a free 5-day high impact use case course, which is a great way to start sorting through like, where do you start? We can't do everything with AI right now. And in fact, we're doing a lot of what I call random acts of AI. So it's not, doesn't have a strategy behind it. And so that course will help point you in the right direction. We have an AI assessment, also free, where you can see where your organization, your marketing organization, is ready across 5 key dimensions, like your data, like your mindset, like your MarTech stack. And it not only gives you that information, but it helps you see what are the concrete actions you could take to move yourself along that continuum. So, and then if you just need help with training or AI use case identification, integration, change management, that's kind of the bread and butter of MarketingFrontier.AI.
Yeah. Okay. Gosh, I love all the content marketing that you're doing. Those sound like very compelling resources. Uh, what advice do you have for marketers listening that are fired up? They want to do this, but they can't get executive buy-in to even get a paid account of ChatGPT, right? They
Yeah,
can't do the basics.
the
How do you coach them on
uh,
overcoming that barrier?
yeah. So the best advice that I heard was from a gentleman named Jim Stern, who plays in the AI and analytics space. And he equated it to PCs in the early days of the PCs. And he talked about these sessions that executives had where they only had their first names, not their last names, on a name badge. And they would walk them into a room and say, this is a monitor, this is a keyboard, this is this is the computer, here's where the on button is. And the only reason I bring that up is because once people connect the dots at AI on a personal level, they generally get it and they generally start to lean in. So whatever you can do with your executive team to make it personal, maybe they love sailing, maybe they hate cooking and they need their meal plan, make it personal, make it casual, make it one-on-one, make it safe, and help show them, like we all do better when things are demonstrated for us, show them the power of AI, and then back that up with the list of concerns that they're going to have around privacy, security, data. Educate yourself so that you can educate your executives, and see if you can build some of that support in more of a one-on-one safe environment.
Mm. Good advice. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Melissa. And if people want to contact you personally, is LinkedIn the best place for that?
LinkedIn is always good, or with the threat of the bots, I'm going to give my email out, Melissa@MarketingFrontier.AI.
All right. Thank you so much. Appreciate your time today.
Thanks so much, Wendy. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for joining me today on Content Marketing Engineered. For show notes, including links to resources, visit truemarketing.com/podcast. While there, you can subscribe to our blog and our newsletter and order a copy of my book, Content Marketing Engineered. Also, I would love your reviews on this podcast. So please, when you get a chance, subscribe and leave me your review on your favorite podcast subscription platform. Thanks and have a great day.